Please be seated. So what I don't want to do today, although it may seem odd, is to speak at length about Jesus being transfigured on a mountain before his disciples. Because while that is a pivotal moment in Jesus' life, an affirming moment for his divine identity, it might not be the most important aspect of what occurred that day. So I don't want to focus too much on Jesus becoming a dazzling white, having Elijah and Moses appear with him and his disciples with him who don't know what to make of it all. I don't want to speak about that at length. What I do want to focus on instead is one short sentence at the beginning of this gospel text. The gospel says this: Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. Now, we don't know what drew Jesus to that mountain or what led him up that mountain. We don't even know what mountain it was. But we know that this climbing of that high mountain is described in one single sentence. And for any of us who have done any hiking, especially ascending a mountain, we know that one small sentence saying that you ascended or you climbed a mountain, that's not adequate, right, to describe all the effort that was put into climbing that mountain. We know how difficult it is to climb a mountain, even if we've only climbed part of a mountain. We also know that the climb itself is as important as getting to the mountaintop. In fact, this gospel text today, well, it made me think of a mountain that our own young adults at All Saints climbed when they went on a mission trip to Alaska last summer. Our young adults traveled to Anchorage, Alaska, to help with an organization called the 98 Fund. Now, the 98 Fund, from what I know of them, is a group that provides retreats for families who have lost a veteran, for families of veterans who were killed in combat. And our young adults went to Alaska to help build cabins and to complete other needed tasks for these families of veterans to use when they go to these cabins and retreat sites. But while in Alaska, our young adults did something else too. They had a community activity, and they climbed a mountain, and not just any mountain. Think about that, an Alaskan mountain, a mountain called the Gold Star Peak. And in your bulletin today, you can see a photo of them, our own young adults, climbing this very mountain. That's a photo of them ascending up Gold Star Peak. And from what I've heard, it was as intimidating a mountain as one could hike. Its summit elevation is 4,148 feet, and you start at an elevation of 1,300 feet. And to give you an idea of how lengthy a hike it was, to make it to the peak of the mountain would be like climbing to the top of the Empire State Building 2.5 times. And as you get closer to the top of the mountain, the terrain becomes all rock and shale and unsteady. And I know that most of our young adults attempted to make it to the top, and a few made it all the way to the peak. And if they felt led to, they could take a set of dog tags with them. And if you make it to the peak, you're able to hang the dog tags of a fallen veteran on a memorial at the peak of Gold Star Peak. And I was fascinated when I heard about this hike and how it might relate to mountains and journeys, and I wanted to interview a few of our young adults so that you could hear them tell about their experience ascending that mountain.
So I was one of the few people that were able to make it to the top of Gold Star Peak, and making it up the mountain was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. Each step still felt like we had a million miles to go, but the entire way up, I just kept on telling myself, I think I can. And then before I knew it, we were standing at the top of the mountain, and I had done something that I had never imagined in my life that I could do. And even after that experience, it kind of opened my eyes to all sorts of other places I could go and hike and experience. And so now, after that hike, I've started looking into more and bigger, more strenuous hikes to continue to see places that I would have never imagined that I'd be physically capable of seeing, because I was able to put forth my best effort and make it all the way up the mountain.
Climbing up Gold Star Peak, I did not make it all the way. I didn't even make it to the first checkpoint. And what I've kind of carried from that, because I did push myself as far as I could. You know, we talked about everybody has their own peak that they're going to reach that day, and that was mine, and then I had to go back down. But I am holding a grudge a little bit because I still want to make it up that mountain. So it's kind of pushed me to mentally and physically prepare myself for the next time we get to do that.
So when I think back about climbing Gold Star Peak, I've told people before that it's probably the most physically demanding thing I've ever done in my whole life, and maybe will ever do. And I think that that's true, because thinking back on it, it's one of those things that I'm like, I have no idea how I even did that. Like, I almost don't even, I have to put myself back in the mindset of how I was even doing that at the time. And so I think it was a couple things, like the people that I was surrounded by, sort of like accountability to them and knowing that I was going to get to make it to the top with all of them. And then also just like the views as we went. Like there were so many different phases, and it kind of just kept changing. Like a little bit higher I got every time the view changed. And so I think that kept me going, was just knowing that it was going to look different as I went, and then the best from the top. Like I was just waiting for that view from the top to feel that sense of accomplishment. So that's what kept me going.
I didn't make it up Gold Star Peak. I made it up just under 700 feet on a 30-degree incline, and I hold on to that because that was something that I never thought I would be able to do. I didn't think I was going to make it up at the beginning when I kept falling down, and every vet around there had to carry me up the mountain, and I do remember feeling at peace and also feeling ghosts with me. I was holding a vet's necklace, and even as I'm falling down, almost passed out, I remembered he has to get up to the mountain. So I yelled at one of them, "Take Ryan with you," and I gave him the dog tag, and they ran it up the mountain, and they're like, "Okay, what's this chick gonna do?" And well, I made it up farther than I ever thought I could. It may have taken forever, but then once I got back down, slid back down, I have never felt more at peace.
When I think about Gold Star Peak, I think about it being one of the most challenging things I've done yet. And to think back that I was successful in doing so, even after the first phase, which is called the silencer, where you literally cannot talk because it is so difficult. I had so many people surrounding me who were encouraging me to keep going, that I did keep going, and I felt the second phase was so much easier for me to get to. Now, I personally did not make it to the top. With a small group of others, we made it 2/3 of the way up, but we considered that our own peaks that we met, and we were able to just sit and talk. Some of us took naps. We ate snacks, and just to see the view was immaculate. Staring out from all sides, trying to soak it up as much as we can, because we know that while hopefully we'll be going back, it never is the same as when you see it then.
So we know now a little bit more about how difficult it can be to climb a mountain. We know how intimidating it can be to even attempt to climb a mountain. And we also know that mountains are significant in the Bible. They were thought to be the place where heaven and earth meet. And maybe that's why so many people still feel drawn, led to climb a mountain. The peak of a mountain was a place that God could be found, a place that God would speak. It was on a mountain where Moses encountered God in a burning bush, and then later received the 10 Commandments atop a mountain. It was the place that God spoke to the Israelite people. It was on a mountain that Moses finally got a glimpse of the promised land of Canaan. And it was on a mountain in the gospel text today that Jesus became transfigured and was spoken to directly by God when God said, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." So I believe that Jesus climbing that mountain that day with his disciples holds a deep spiritual meaning in and of itself. The mountain that Jesus had to climb, though, it didn't find its completion that day. That mountain was only one arduous step of many. The mountain, the climb, it would continue. And his mountain, the mountain that Jesus would continue to climb, would include pain, persecution, suffering, betrayal, and death. And the question I always ask then is why? Why did Jesus have to climb that metaphoric mountain? Why did his life, his journey, have to culminate in the way that it did? Why? Well, to answer that, I think we have an idea of why Jesus told his disciples that day not to tell anyone about what they had seen, which I always thought seemed kind of odd, that he would be transfigured, and then he would tell his disciples, even though God had spoken in front of all of them, don't tell anyone about this. But I think about why he told them that, why he told them to keep his divine identity a secret. I think ultimately he told them that because Jesus' life could only be fully understood if connected to his death and resurrection. Jesus saved people even while he was alive. He gave life back to people by healing them of illnesses and by casting out the demonic, by feeding multitudes of people, by forgiving and accepting people who felt abandoned and cast out of their own communities. And if that's all that Jesus was, a man with a divine power to heal, a man who was able to teach and feed people, a man who was loving and compassionate, if that's all he was, then he would be a good doctor, but maybe not a savior. Without Jesus' death, the love of God couldn't be fully comprehended. It couldn't be fully understood. Because without a humble willingness to die in order to give life back to humanity, then the love of God would be limited, and it wouldn't be unconditional. I'm often jaded and pessimistic, and I fully own that about myself. When I look at how so many people behave in the world, I found that I don't have a ton of faith in humanity. I don't have faith that people, including myself, can be truly selfless and loving and giving and accepting. While most of us want to be good and obedient and helpful and faithful and loving, we're also human. And that means that we have limits to how loving and accepting and giving that we can be. If something or someone threatens our security and safety and wealth and livelihood, well, we put a limit then on how loving and selfless that we can be. We kind of put our boxing gloves up, don't we? If we feel threatened by something, we pull back. We have a limit. to how loving that we can be. And I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to that. But it's hard to believe in an unconditional love of God if all that we see in the world is a love with conditions attached. But Jesus came into the world as an act of divine generosity and holy selflessness and a love for every human being. And that love, the love of God, it could only be understood if it was willing to die rather than to condemn. The final mountain that Jesus climbed was a hill called Golgotha, the place where he would be crucified, the place that he would cry out, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Jesus died and rose again to show that there were no limits to the love of God, to show that he could take on all the sin, all the burden of humanity that might come between us and God. The mountain was high, the path was difficult, and that seems to be the point of climbing a mountain, that it's not meant to be easy. That Jesus would climb that mountain to the top, even if it meant his own death. The love of God that would go to any length to love us and to save us. Amen.